Here we go. Heidi, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for taking the time to come on. I would have already introduced this in the title, but I listened to one of your podcasts on self-confidence and I thought it was great. And like I've been doing a lot recently, I hear a good podcast. And I'm like, right, I need to reach out to that person and find out and delve into a little bit more. So that's why I got you on. Heidi, do you want to just give yourself a little bit of an introduction to the listeners?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's awesome to be here. So I'm Heidi Jones, a health and lifestyle coach. And my main mission is to help and empower women to action and achieve their goals and create a healthier work-life balance for themselves. So that's what I do.
Oh, amazing. And the podcast, you've got your own podcast as well, which I'll link in the show notes and you can introduce at the end. A lot of your stuff is, I like listening to it because it's, like I mentioned before, you're kind of going deeper into more of like the psychology of, behaviors and that type of stuff. And before we got on this podcast, you mentioned before that self-confidence is something that you've seen people take more of an interest in, particularly over the last year.
Yeah. So what we was like just bringing up was the fact that I had actually done a webinar over the summer during the middle of lockdown about self-confidence. And I put it out there just to see what the vibe was really, because I was getting a lot of interest and questions around confidence. And I put it out there, see who needed some tips, some help on self-confidence. And it was one of my most attended webinars I've ever done. And so that for me just, it showed clearly that there is kind of something going on with our self-confidence or the need to feel a bit more confident. And as we mentioned just before we went live, was part of confidence comes from our experiences, and we can lack confidence or have a confidence knock during the experiences we have in our life. And we've all just gone through something that we've probably never been through necessarily before. And some of us are going to be set up to be able to maybe move forward in a confident way. And some of us are going to have had a confidence knock because of what's happened kind of around the circumstances that we've found ourselves in. And we might not know how to deal with it, or we might just need to have a bit of a recharge, a reset on like, actually, hang on, let me just check in with myself. How am I feeling? And you might not be feeling as confident as normal. And that in itself can kind of throw us a little bit off track. And and that was one of the reasons I did the podcast on it, because I wanted to help people realize that it's actually really common to have a confidence knock during kind of like an event and an experience in our life, such as lockdown, COVID, all the things that have happened this year, so many redundancies and job losses, moving countries, having to be full-time mums and work at the same time, homeschooling, all of it can cause a huge knock in confidence.
Well, I'm sure we're going to dive into that topic a little bit more, but I've said this on my show before, because I get such amazing guests on like yourself. I always use this as an opportunity to start my own therapy as well. And although, with doing the podcast and, just being a health and fitness coach and being kind of out there, people might almost always assume that someone like myself has a lot of self-confidence. And I actually don't think I do. So it'd be really interesting to hear, into a little bit more in depth about what self-confidence actually is and some tips and how to improve that as well. So let's dive in then. Heidi, what do we mean when we say self-confidence?
Okay, so with confidence, it's different for everybody, okay? But it does go down to our self-esteem and our self-worth and our self-belief. So how we view ourselves is what's most important when it comes to self-confidence. For example, like you say yourself, you may not feel very confident in certain situations. And that can really throw us, because we can be really confident in some parts of our lives and then not confident in other parts of our lives. And there it's about looking at your self-esteem around certain areas within your life. And that can come back to maybe the experiences that you've had as a child, to think how you were brought up. It could be down to some knocks that you've maybe had, or how you've dealt with certain situations as you've grown up to where you are now. But going back to kind of like what self-confidence is and how we can maybe view it, we can also get confused in, well, I'm quite an introverted person, and so I could view myself as not very confident. I'm very introvert, I'm not extrovert, so not someone who's going to go out there, be loud, making sure I get all the attention in the room, those type of things, those qualities that are often seen as confidence, okay, can trip us up and think that we're not very confident ourselves. But actually, confident looks different in so many different ways. And it's not falling to what society says it is, I think, is a big part of it as well.
Wow, that's super interesting. And the fact that you just use that example then of someone who's perhaps introverted, but actually has quite a lot of self-confidence versus someone who's extroverted and maybe has lack of self-confidence as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, is that something that, obviously, because this is a subject that you've spoken about quite a lot now and you've gone into in a lot of depth, is that something that you can kind of see in situations that you're in? Can you tell if someone's got perhaps a lack of self-confidence and they're maybe covering that up with being a little bit more extroverted?
Yeah, I think I see it more the other way around in my line of work through the type of people that I work with. So I have lots of women that are in high-flying careers, and they feel that they're not confident enough to maybe go and get a particular promotion or change careers or do more than what they're currently doing, say, because they haven't got those leadership qualities that are perhaps seen as the confident qualities you need to move forward, which, like we say, are the extroverted qualities, and they're more introverted. So they try and change who they are to be seen more confident, when actually there's certain things that we can do to help ourselves come across more confident, feel more confident, by kind of just accepting who we are and starting to kind of use our own unique strengths and talents that we have to get ourselves forward.
Do you, you mentioned already about where lack of self-confidence can come from, and you mentioned like in your childhood, and there's loads of different, times in your life that can kind of come into play. Have you got any kind of like really good practical examples of, we spoke a little bit about COVID as well. People might have had a massive knock of confidence then. Have you got any kind of like practical examples of obvious areas? Is it more of is it the people that you're surrounding yourself with? Is it your environment? Is it literally from mistakes and failures that you've made in the past that is more likely to come from?
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of things that you can do to help yourself. So if we focus on like where you're at the moment, depending on your level of confidence. So if you know that you are not very confident because of something that's happened, or it's it's just who you feel you are at the moment, you're just not very confident. And there's qualities that you can look for. So for example, if you're maybe behaving in a way that is doing what other people's expectations are of you, you're focusing on that rather than what you want to do. Maybe you're staying in your comfort zone, okay, because you kind of got the fear of taking any risks, or you're working ridiculously hard to cover up any kind of like little mistakes, or you have to read through something 100 times because you're worried there'll be one tiny mistake in there. Another way to recognize if you are kind of like low on confidence is maybe the one that I always use with my clients is, oh, that's a nice top you've got on. And your instant reaction is to go, oh no, this old thing, God no. You won't accept the compliment for what it is. Can kind of like highlight that you've got something going on there around low self-confidence and maybe self-esteem. And so going back to the question of like, what can you do? Well, it depends where you're at. So for example, if you can see, okay, actually, yeah, some of these qualities are showing, this is me, I can't take a compliment. The first step that you could do is literally to say thank you to someone who gives you a compliment. And that in itself can be super uncomfortable, can be, you could go red, you could feel really outside your comfort zone. But by just consciously being aware and starting to accept praise, compliments, criticism in a positive way, you can start to build up your self-confidence. Yeah.
There's a term that I heard on, I've heard it dotted around on a few podcasts recently around this topic, and it's imposter syndrome. I don't know if you've ever come across that. And that's the idea that you doubt everything that you're doing, and you feel like you're in a position where you obviously, you fear being exposed, even though you might not be in an environment where it actually matters if you're actually being exposed. Have you come across any kind of like stuff around imposter syndrome before?
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome, that term is thrown a lot around like women in the workplace. And so for me, I do hear a lot about it. I mean, when it comes to being able to identify that, it's about it holding you back from career progression. It's about you being afraid to be seen for who you are, that you're always going to get tripped up or caught out for not being able to do the job. And so there's a little bit of difference with confidence and imposter syndrome. So what I would do there is always always look at yourself from a perspective of what stories are you telling yourself? Okay, because I've gone into this on my previous podcast on this, was something that we really need to look at when it comes to imposter syndrome and our confidence, self-esteem issues, is the stories that we tell ourselves, our limiting beliefs. And that's where it can kind of come from our like childhood experiences that we've had growing up, etc. Because those are the stories that can stop us kind of moving forward and, embracing a more confident version of ourselves.
There's I almost feel like the exact opposite of imposter syndrome is that quote, fake it till you make it. It's almost like there's people who have that. And listen, people are very successful who, and it's not necessarily a negative thing, who maybe don't perhaps have the skills or the things that they need to progress, but because they've got that confidence that they're able to utilize that and put it into, something productive.
Yeah, absolutely. It can totally work. It's like if you've got the right values and priorities in place, like you've got the right values in place, and you're going to fake it till you make it because you've got a genuine good intention, then I'm like, go for it. Put on the confident outfit that you need, or get your hair done, and you can project yourself out there in a confident way, even though you may not feel it necessarily inside. You can learn tricks to do it with how you stand, how you sit, how you put yourself out there, how you look at people in the eye. There's all like the practical things that you can do, especially if you're going to fake it till you make it. I only agree if you have got the right intentions that you are going to like develop what you need to actually know to be able to make a positive impact. But it's also like when it comes to the limiting beliefs, it's like around the stories such as I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. So it's like, I'm not smart enough, I'm not thin enough, or, toned enough, or I'm not clever enough. I haven't got enough money, all these like things that can hold us back, these stories that can eat away at our own self-esteem and confidence until it kind of becomes a point where we feel like we're stuck.
You touched on it there, but let's just go into a little bit more detail, the practical things, because in the podcast that you did, I thought that was great that you actually gave practical examples that people can take away. And it was literally from how you're sitting now, thinking about your position, shoulders back. What other stuff is there, like practical examples for, just little tips and tricks to improve self-confidence?
Yeah. So I would always focus on cultivating a positive mindset as much as possible. And that's not about being happy all the time. It's about, feeling that whatever happens, whatever's thrown your way, that you can overcome it, that you can make sure that you're able to move forward in one way or another, that you're going to be able to cope. So a simple thing to be able to do here is to become your own cheerleader. People get a coach because they need that person next to them who believes in them, that pushes them, that says, yes, you can do it, even when they don't feel like they can. And that's great. But imagine if you can do that for yourself. It's about being able to hear what you're saying to yourself and then turn it into more of a positive comment. You can call this reframing or whatever, but it's more like if you're saying, I'm just not good enough, I'm too shy, I can't do this, I can't do that, then you're going to live that story, you're going to live that out. So that negativity is always going to kind of be there. But by kind of switching it and going, okay, you don't feel enough. What are the actual facts? And what are you actually, what is it that you just believe? What's the story around this? And then you can say, right, actually, I am enough. I might not know everything, but I can learn. I'm good at this, I'm good at that. And it's a kind of like cheering yourself on. That's a practical thing that you can do. It's not always easy. These things are never easy. This is the hard thing. Like, we can talk about them and say, go and do them, but people need to just be okay with the fact that it's not easy and that working on ourselves is actually hard. And it's just as hard as the physical stuff. If you want to build a particular physique, it's hard work. If you want to create a mindset where you are more confident, a belief system that you feel that is going to, help you achieve your goals and dreams, then it's hard work sometimes. So it's about just kind of being kind to ourselves. And that would be another point, is show yourself some compassion. One of the key things I try and get my clients to do is to talk to themselves as if they were their own best friend. When something maybe doesn't go right, or you take that risk and then it goes horribly wrong, instead of kind of beating yourself up saying, I told you so, you're not enough, you're not good enough, why did you even try that? Talk to yourself as if you were your own best friend and say, okay, you gave it a go, that's fine, it didn't go to plan, but you can have another go next time, or it's going to be okay next time. It doesn't devalue who you are. That type of thing.
And I think it was a really good point that you brought up, that it's not easy to do those types of things. And obviously even comparing it to, going to the gym and getting the physique that you want and managing your nutrition, that type of stuff as well. And I guess that's why people like yourselves, who actually have some experience in that, in the coaching side of it, are there to kind of guide people and give people the practical advice that they need. And I think it's just, every book that I listen to always talks about it. Some of the stuff that you mentioned then, even just building good daily routines, habits, self-taught, meditation, all those types of things are there, and people are constantly talking about it. But if you're not bought into that, it's very hard to put yourself in that position, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It almost seems a bit wishy-washy to begin with, and then you actually start to invest a bit of time into it and go, do you know what, this is actually making me feel better.
Yeah, I think the key is you've got to want to change. It's like everything, you've got to want to do it, and then it's recognizing the benefits and the costs. So if you were going to stay the same, what are the costs? And if you've got low confidence, the cost can be that you never get to achieve that job that you want, that you never get to feel good about yourself, that you never get to go out and do those bucket list things that you've got on your list because you just don't believe in yourself enough, or you don't feel that you're worth it. Okay, so like identifying the costs of staying the same can help you then see, well, if I do make these steps and work on this stuff, the benefits are that I'm going to go and be able to do, whatever it is, make it personal to you, and it can help it, because it can make it easier for you to accept that it's something that you need to work on.
I'm not sure if this is some. Yeah, go on. Yeah, sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say, because this stuff isn't necessarily something tangible that you can hold. It's all the inner work, and the inner work is not always something that we want to work on.
Yeah, I get that. We've got that because we're doing this on Zoom. We have that 1 second delay in between, so it's always going to happen. But the joys of working over the internet. What I wanted to ask was around social media, and I don't know if this is something that you talk to people about or you've done on any of your podcasts, but the role of social media and self-confidence, is there a clear relationship between the two? Is there a negative? Is there a positive? Because for me, it always seems like, as much as social media is great for, you could list out all the great things, the negative sides of it, one of the things that stands out to me is that people constantly comparing themselves to, influencers, you know, celebrities, that type of stuff? Is there a big kind of relationship that you see there?
Yeah, I think if people are, okay, let's think about this. So in our lives, we have our careers, we have our family, we have our friends, we have our side hustles, we have our podcasts, we have our goals, we have our health. All of the things basically are pulling us in different directions. And then we go and look on social media and see that everyone else has it all figured out, when majority of the time, nobody does. Yeah. But in our life, we feel like we are failing the most because we're experiencing all the hard stuff. You know, we've been pulled in all different directions, and we can never really give 100% to all of those things. And it's overwhelming. I think it's been heightened with the pandemic that has been going on. Obviously, that has thrown a lot of people, because we've got to deal with that as well. And that just come out of nowhere. And everything else is still happening, you know, or even more is happening for people, you know. And when we go onto social media as an escape to kind of like just kind of switch our minds off, just to, you know, I'm going to have a look and see what's going on. All this habit that we've created where we just have a little scroll rather than dealing with what we're needing to focus on. We just see the positive of what's going on around us, and then that can really kind of chip away at our own self-confidence. We can then feel like we're lacking or that we're not good enough. It kind of reinforces the stories that we've got running through our heads, or that inner critic is going, told you so, they've got it together but you haven't. You're never going to be able to do what they're doing, you know. And it does really play a big impact.
I guess there could almost be the other side of that as well. And I guess if the person whose feed you're reading delivers it in the right way with enough authenticity behind it, could have the opposite effect as well. It could actually push you to do a little bit more. If they can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah, I think social media is great. I'm on it, you know, I try and share what I can, but I always have a positive spin. And sometimes in my own, I'm thinking, well, some people don't want to see positivity all the time.
Yeah.
But all I can do is be genuine to me. And so I just put it out there, because you can't control the other person. And so I do think the ownership is fully on the person that's kind of like watching it. And I'm talking about adults here. So it's like, you know, if you're, you know, a woman who is feeling quite low in her in confidence, and that you're sitting there looking at what other people are doing rather than maybe zoning in on what you need to be doing, or just giving yourself a break, giving yourself some kindness and self-compassion, then, you know, then you're going to be able to look at social media in a more positive light and see inspiration rather than like competition and comparison.
Yeah, definitely. This is one of my last questions: arrogance versus self-confidence. Is there a fine line between it?
I don't think there's a fine line. So I read that question actually because you sent that one through, and I was like, oh, this is a interesting one, because I'm seeing it through the eyes of a woman and you're seeing it through the eyes of a man. And I honestly think there's a big difference. So for a woman, I think what we need to always consider is confidence looks different from how a woman portrays it and how a man portrays it. So if a woman is stood at the front of an audience, or maybe at the office, you know, in front of the boardroom, as they say, and they're loud and they're quite aggressive and they're, you know, being direct and, you know, excited about what they want to do and, you know, let's get stuff done, you know, 100% in. It's not always taken the right way. It can be seen as bossy, or who does she think she is, or, you know, those type of things. Whereas if a guy stood up there, it can be seen completely different. It can be seen as leadership. And so it's a really interesting question when you say like the fine line between arrogance and confidence. I don't think there is a fine line. I think someone is either arrogant because their intentions aren't in the right place, and someone who's confident is there because they're being true to who they are. So they're very aligned with their values and they have a purpose and a mission. Yeah. So we can, as humans, you can kind of see it, can't you? You can read it from someone quite clearly if they're being arrogant or if they're being confident. But I think for women especially, you've got to look at yourself and think, I'm not going to change who I am to be somebody else or to be more like a man in order to be more confident. I'm going to focus in on my own qualities and how I can leverage them to get my confidence across. So for example, like I said, I'm an introvert and I'm much better at being able to talk to small groups of people than large audiences. That won't stop me, but I'll always make sure that I can set myself up to that type of situation, for example. Does that answer your question? I'm not having
definitely.
a go at men, I'm just saying it's different.
Yeah, no, and do you know what? I came up with that question that I was thinking of things around this topic, and I was generally interested to know if there was any similarities behind the two of them. But I think you nailed it in what you said in terms of like the intent and where it's coming from, and the fact that as humans we're kind of a little bit more dialed into where that is coming from, whether it is an arrogance thing, or whether it is more self-confidence. Last question for you, Heidi. Does everyone suffer with self-confidence or lack of self-confidence?
Lack of self-confidence. I think everyone will experience something to do with rebuilding or building self-esteem to confidence, because we're always going to have a knock somewhere along the line of our life. So it could be through like a tragedy, like a death in the family, someone we love. It could be heartbreak. It can be the loss of a job. It can be, being made redundant. Just not achieving our goals and moving forward with what we'd hoped for. All of these things can have an impact. And then it's just recognizing how much of an impact it can have on you, to how much you need to then maybe focus on moving forward in helping yourself rebuild self-esteem and self-confidence. So I think, yes, to an extent, everyone will experience it in some way. It's just how you handle it and move forward that makes a difference.
I lied. I've got one more question for you, just to bring it back round to, like obviously a lot of the people that listen to this, because it's health and fitness podcast, tend to be people who are, training, nutrition, that type of stuff. Is it a good idea to take a back step, work out about your self-confidence before kind of pushing on towards, a diet or an exercise program or something similar?
Good question. I don't think so. I honestly think that setting goals is a really good way to help yourself increase your self-confidence. So I would approach it from that perspective. So if you know that you have some confidence issues or you're lacking confidence somewhere, setting goals around nutrition and fitness can really help you overcome it. It's just kind of being more conscious to it. It's like saying, right, I'm going to set this goal not only to lose weight, but to build up some confidence. And I want to feel and look like this, but I'm also going to behave in this way. So look at the behavior that goes around the process of achieving those goals. I think will make a big difference.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And that's normally people's why as well, that they don't even realize when they start these things. It's actually, they think they want to lose weight, but they actually want to do it to improve their confidence. And part of improving their confidence is to lose weight. So
that's
I think that's a great, yeah.
And I was just going to say, like the example like earlier, as soon as you start to lose weight and someone says, oh, you've lost weight, say, oh, thank you. I've been working really hard. Not, oh, really? I can't even tell. Like most people will say. And it's like that little thing there can really help alongside the goal of losing weight, help them build up that confidence in themselves.
I see that on a daily basis. Someone like another lady complimenting someone else. And then it's as you said, it's never receiving that compliment and saying thanks. It's always like there's a reason for it, or
justifying.
They shouldn't congratulate themselves. But in fact, I get it the other way around, because for a guy, especially if you're a guy who's training and strength training, and someone says, hey, you look like you've lost some weight, that's not always a good thing. And I'm
right. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Heidi,
so I am coming from a woman's perspective and bias. So you got to remember that. But yeah, that's something that I think, when people do set these goals, it's really important that they also kind of behave the way they want to as well.
Funnily enough,
that goes with the result.
Funnily enough, for a guy, it's not good the other way around either if you say you look like you put on weight. So there's just no winning.
There's no win.
Heidi, thanks so much for coming on. Listen, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do in terms of your coaching program and your podcast and all of the great stuff you've got going on?
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So I've got a podcast called the Heidi Jones Coaching Podcast. I'm just finishing up with the second series. So you can find that on iTunes and Spotify and all the usual places. And that's for high flying career women. So that's about helping you, move forward with your goals, but also achieve that work-life balance in healthy ways. I have my one-to-one coaching diary that's open at the moment. So just all you need to do is get in touch through a DM on Instagram would be absolutely fine. And I also have some programs that are coming up regarding goal setting. I have a program called Climb Your Mountain. So it's about obviously overcoming those hard times and reaching the top, as cheesy as it sounds, but it's a process that I've been doing since 2017. I've had over 50 women go through that program and they've got some great results. So yeah, if you're interested, all you need to do is get in touch.
Yeah, brilliant. And Heidi, I'm going to get you back on the show in the future because there was another podcast I listened to of yours and it was the one about burnout. And I thought you gave some great kind of practical examples that I think a lot of people will be able to resonate with as well. So we'll arrange that one for the future. But thanks again for coming on to the show.
Thank you, Joff. Speak soon.